Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back into OTRAM's YouTube channel. Today we're going to go through the brake bleeding procedure on a 100 series Land Cruiser, or this one's actually a LX470 Lexus, but it's the same thing. We just did front calipers on this, so we're going to go ahead and bleed all the brake lines. I'm going to start with bleeding out the accumulator booster assembly. Technically, we don't need to do it this time because we never let the reservoir run empty, and we haven't disassembled the pump from the actual assembly. But just so you see the process that's involved, I figured I'd go through that step as well. So the first thing you do is obviously you'd put fluid in the brake reservoir if it's empty. But key out of the ignition, you're going to hit the brake pedal. The manual says 40 times. Usually it seems to happen at about 30. You'll keep pumping the pedal, and then all of a sudden the resistance will just drop and go down to nothing. And that means you've used up all the pressure that's built up in the accumulator, so you've drained the accumulator down. I may not actually be able to feel it on this one since we've got air in the front lines. Normally you can feel it and it just drops. So we're going to call that good for now. We'll stick the key in the ignition and we'll turn it on. And I don't know if you guys can hear it, but the brake booster pump, the electric pump, is running to fill the accumulator back up. So we'll let that stop doing its thing. There we go. So now we've bled the accumulator, which we didn't need to on this one, but we did it anyway. So we're going to take the key back out. And let me move you around front here. Get you lined up. This next step isn't exactly necessary, but we found it makes it a lot easier. And especially right now, Crash has already gone home for the evening, so I'm the only one here. So I'm going to use a pressure bleeder to make sure that we keep pressure on the fluid so that when I'm opening and closing the bleeders at the bottom, we don't get any backflow since we don't have a second person pumping the pedal. So I'm going to put my power probe master cylinder adapter on here and tighten it up. And then take the hose from my power bleeder and hook it onto there. Put my air hose up to my bleeder. And I'm just going to watch for leaks real quick. And we seem happy there. You'll also see I've got a battery charger set up on here. We're going to be running the electric pump for the ABS assembly a bunch during bleeding, and it just seems to help to keep everything happy if you keep a charger hooked up. And we've got it's a battery maintainer. Usually you use it for programming the computers to keep a steady voltage. So I've just got the maintainer set at 14.2 volts. And it'll keep up with the electrical draw as we run the pump. So let me come around here. And normally, when you're doing this, you would have a second person in the vehicle pumping the brake pedal for you. I I don't, because it's just me here this evening. Let me set you up, point you at the rear here. But also so you can kind of see the front door. So I'm going to get in, I'm going to turn the key on, and I'm going to hit the brake pedal 20 times. Okay, and then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to put my bleeder catch bottle on the brake bleeder, and I'm going to open it up. And normally this is where you would have a second person pump these while you've got this open. Since I've got the pressure assembly on, I can pump them by myself without having to worry about having that second person, because I'm not going to draw air back through. Close that one. And I'm going to go ahead and run through this procedure on all four wheels, and then I'll bring you back for the ABS bleeding. So we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so I've gone through and I've done the initial bleed on all four wheel cylinders. So now we've got our old Toyota MasterTech plugged into the OBD2 port. We're just going to go in ahead, and I've already been in here once, so we're going to select last vehicle. And then we're going to scroll down to ABS traction control. Yes. And some of the aftermarket scan tools will do this as well. Like we've got a Snap-on Solace, and it's kind of hit or miss on whether or not it will do this. And we'll just scroll down to air bleeding. I've already done the front right line, so we'll come down here to the front left. I've already got my bleeder bottle on the caliper with the bleeder open. So go ahead and click yes, and then enter, and just come over here and hold the pedal down, and you'll feel it open the pedal will drop, and then it'll tell you waiting time. So you can release that, and it's rebuilding its pressure up top. And I usually run through this twice, just to make sure I've got it bled on each caliper. So we'll go ahead and go back through and select that again. And you'll feel it drop. And normally you'd have somebody down below opening and closing the valve as this is happening. Since I've got the pressure bleeder on there, I'm not worrying about it. So I just need to go and do the two rear calipers. So I'll bring you back once that's done and show you the final steps. Okay, so we've got good brake pedal now. We've done the initial bleed, and we've done the computer bleed on all four wheel cylinders, or all four brake calipers rather. The last step, and it's a fairly important one, is to set the level of the brake fluid. You can't just leave it as is. Like if you look at it right now, it's right on the max line. Which you would think, awesome, great. But right now, it's on the max line with the accumulator also fully charged. The accumulator can bleed down, or if you hit the brakes, like in a parking lot or something without the engine running, it'll bleed down. If you leave it set at the max line, when the accumulator bleeds down, it'll overflow the top of the reservoir. So what we're going to do is basically that same step as earlier, where with the key off, we pump the brake pedal 40 times, and that'll drain the accumulator back into the master so we can see what our overall volume is going to be. So hopefully you guys can see right now the level line is right here. I'm going to go inside, pump the brake pedal until the accumulator is bled out, and then we'll see the new full mark. So just one moment. And again, the key is off for this part. And there it goes, it just dropped to the floor, so we're all the way up. And as you can see, the brake level is risen quite a bit. So I'm just gonna go grab our turkey baster and draw some of that back out. And this is a clean turkey baster suction bulb thing that we only use for brake fluid. There we go. Now we're right on the max line. And now we're all finished up. If you've had brake lines open, calipers off, things like that, it's a good idea to pump the brakes a couple of times, recheck all the junctions you've had open for leaks and weeps, you know, because you don't want to run a brake fluid going down the highway. Anyway, that's how we bleed brakes on the 100 series LX470 here at Otram. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did, please subscribe below, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.